Families of the 17 victims of the Boksburg gas leak are demanding the swift arrest of the perpetrators. It's alleged illegal miners operating in the area opened a nitrogen oxide cylinder, which then suffocated the residents of the Angelo informal settlement in Boksburg in Ekurhuleni. Residents have described the horrific and chaotic scenes that they experienced. Our reporter Manqoba Mchunu has been following that story for us today, joining us now just to give us an afternoon wrap of what's been happening there. Manqoba, good afternoon. What was the feeling in the Angelo informal settlement today?
Well, but then I can tell you that there's certainly a lot of grief from community members of the Angelo informal settlement. But in the midst of that grief, there's also anger among community members about the deaths of 17 of their community members. Of course, this all happened on Wednesday night when there was that gas leak that happened in that community. And just speaking to some of the residents, they've been telling us that, you know, there were chaotic scenes there just moments after this has happened. Some of the families had been cooking, some of them had been watching television when they smelt a strong fume in the air, and this is when they then tried to get out and see what was happening. They could hear the sound, the hissing sound of what sounded like a gas cylinder that was had been cut open or had been left open, and that's when some of them had fallen dizzy, some of them had collapsed, and ultimately 17 of them dying, Pratan. Among them 5 women as well as 3 children, I understand, and the rest of them were men, we understand. The youngest of those victims was 1 year old. So you can understand, Pratan, how sad this community is, how devastated they are by what had happened there in that area. Of course, they're still looking for answers. They want those that were responsible for this to be arrested by police. We understand that one of those suspects died in hospital, but we understand that another one had since ran away from the area. So the investigations, of course, are still continuing, but residents this afternoon were being given food parcels by the Department of Social Development. And you could just see, Pratan, just from the faces of those residents, that they are still reeling from what has happened in this community. And I spoke to one of the gentlemen from there. He was in fact one of the men that was brave enough, Praten, to go into the shack and to stop or to close these gas cylinders that were leaking at the time. He had to use a wet towel to cover his nose, and he described just the moments after he had arrived at the scene and what he saw. People who were struggling to breathe, some of them were already dead at the time. Take a listen, Praten, to what this resident had to say.
I was at my house late, around 8 o'clock. Then after that, then I heard the knock of the community on the window, asking help that the people are dying on that side. Then I tried to rush that side. When I'm on the way to rush that side, I meet another mothers that were going to my side. They say, no, don't go that side. That gas is dangerous. People are dying that side. Try to get the wet towel and use it when you go to that gas.
So you went to the gas leak?
Yes, I went to the gas. I informed one of my colleagues, Manaka, the one who was hearing about it. We will receive a phone call from the people that there's a people dying that side. Then I go with, I phone Manaka, hey, let's meet that side. I go to that side, I meet Manaka. When we are there, we find the people laying down, dying, they were dead people. When we were there, then I told Manaka, hey Manaka, let's go inside, because we hear the noise of the gas was making shh. And then I say, hey, let's go inside. Come, Manaka, put a lap on your face, on your nose. Then we go that side. When I tried to jump, the fence was higher than me. Then I pressed the fence down. When I pressed the fence down, Manaka jumped inside, only to find that there's only one bottle that we see. Manaka switch off that pot. There's another pot, 2 bottles at the back. Then we were thinking that we are finished. When we go to help the other people who were falling down outside, to jump outside, we are helping the people. Come another guy say, there's another one.
Manqoba, did you manage to speak to any survivor?
Certainly, Pratan. In fact, I spoke to some of the families that were there on the scene. And one of the ladies that I spoke to was a 52-year-old lady who had just been discharged from hospital. She was among the 11 people that were rushed to the Boksburg hospital. And she had been discharged this afternoon, Pratan. She told me that she had only just learned upon arrival at the informal settlement that, in fact, her husband had passed away in this tragedy. He was 58 years old. The last she says she remembers, Brian, is that there was a strong smell of fumes. Shortly after that, she says she felt dizzy, she collapsed, and she only woke up in hospital. She realized only when she woke up in hospital what had happened, and upon inquiring, she was not told. She was told that her husband had also collapsed on the scene, and this is when she had learned then today that her husband was one of those who passed away. We also spoke, Pratan, to a family of, or a household rather, of 6 people that died. These were people, some of them family members, some of them were tenants at that particular homestead. This man was quite devastated, just describing what happened there. He was also there when this gas leak occurred. In fact, this household is just opposite of where this gas leak had occurred, and they're saying that there was pandemonium when this happened. He saw his brothers running around, everybody gasping for air, and just saying that, you know, he was lucky enough that he could escape and get a bottle of milk to drink, to try and perhaps, deal with the fumes. So he says he lost 3 of his own family members, but the other 3 were tenants at that particular homestead. He also told us, Pratan, of just the horror of what happened on that day. Take a listen.
Abantu balahlekile la ekhaya, kulahlekile 6 wabantu. Kulahlekile 6 wabantu bashonile wonke. I3 bebaqasha la ekhaya lendlini. I3 ifamily yami straight, e1 ibhuti wami, ebe2 abafana bami babancane. Nikimi abanye basesibhedlela ma abangangabuya namanje, basesibhedlela be2 nomntwana benza 3. La kushiyeke mina nomunye umfana uhlala ulaphakathi la, sishiyeke sithu kuphela.
Manqoba, there's a call by residents for swift arrest of the alleged perpetrators of this gas leak. Do you have any further updates? What have you picked up regarding the Zama Zamas and the police investigation?
Well, community members, Pratan, will tell you that, the issue of illegal mining is a big issue in that community. In fact, we know that this was an operation of Zama Zamas that ultimately led to the gas leak that was happening. What we're hearing from community members is that, they use these gas cylinders as part of their operations when they do illegal mining. So one of the gentlemen that I spoke to was telling me that, everybody in that community thrives on illegal mining. So it is something that residents survive on in that particular community. But they're saying that this was a rather unfortunate incident that had occurred. But residents saying that they want to see some sort of action being taken as far as protecting the community, but also as far as arresting those that are behind this leak that has happened. Of course, at this stage, what we understand is that one of them escaped. We did ask police how far the investigations are or whether there have been any arrests that have been made, but they're saying that at this particular stage there have been no arrests. They are still investigating this particular issue, but of course it has thrust the issue of illegal mining back in the spotlight, with community members saying that government needs to take action against some of the disused mines in these areas, because they are the ones that seemingly perpetuate the activities or those illegal activities in those communities. But then, as far as we understand, those investigations are still underway. What we do know, though, is that the departments, the local government department of public safety is involved as well in terms of just identifying and trying to locate some of the victims. We understand that some of them are not from South Africa. In fact, many of them are Mozambican nationals, some of them are Zimbabwean nationals. So there are also plans to try and meet with the families as to arrange how the bodies will then be transported back to their countries for burial. So the investigations, we understand, are still continuing as far as police are concerned, but residents quite distraught, quite devastated, and really still trying to make sense of such a tragic unfolding of events in their community.
Manqoba Mchunu, thank you very much for that update from Boksburg about the tragedy that has befallen the Angelo informal settlement. More news